Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I get to simplify the marketing and the mindset necessary so chiropractors can make more income, have more impact, and bring a whole bunch more enjoyment into their practice. He's back. Today's episode is with the amazing Tony Ebel. He's now my most interviewed guest, and he certainly still has the most downloaded episode of all time. Now, not only is Tony an amazing chiropractor, but he also has one of the most brilliant business minds that I know going around. In today's episode, we're talking all about growth, but not just any old growth, but how to grow something fast, your practice fast. Tony shares the same 3-step process that he used to create a 7-figure, $1 million business in less than 12 months. We dive into the weeds with this. Let me be really clear. This is not about you being busier, working harder, or grinding. Tony's doing none of those things. In fact, when people introduce him as the busiest guy going around, he kind of chuckles on the inside because busyness, he talks about, is what gets in the way of productivity. So we go step by step through what it takes to grow your practice and to grow it quickly in 2022. If that's what you're looking for, then this episode is for you. Enjoy. See you in there. Tony Ebel, welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Is this the longest break we've taken between us jamming on here?
Let's not do it again. It's been too long. We've been having other chats unrecorded in between. And so let's not let the audience have to wait so long in between us talking. But it does mean that we have some super cool things to be talking about today. I think you're now well and truly the most interviewed guest on. I might have to have you as a co-presenter rather than a guest here as well.
You do know that it eats at me that I don't have a podcast yet. So maybe we're going to talk about speed today. Maybe my fastest way to a podcast is just squeeze my husky ass right onto yours.
Just jump in on this one here. Yeah, yes, absolutely. Well, you're very welcome at any stage. You have a standing invitation to come and join me here as well. If you're new to the podcast and you haven't listened to any of Tony's episodes, when you finish this one here, just do a search through. In fact, in the show notes, I will link to all these previous ones there too. They are, I think you still do have the most downloaded episode. In fact, I know you do. So you're still winning there. Many have come to try but here's the great thing about a podcast is that even though that very first episode we did, which was how to fill your practice using Facebook ads into your workshop there too, that episode still continues to have people listen to it as well. I mean, this is, this podcast in essence for my business is an asset that keeps on appreciating as well, which is why I damn well want chiropractors out there building their own assets, that has them, having more people in the community know, like, and trust them as well. Can you give just a 90-second thumbnail, who you are, what you do, and then we're going to talk all about speed today, which I'm thrilled to be chatting about.
Yeah, totally. Heck, maybe a quick run through my background would help kind of segue into how I think I have learned to have such speed in business today. Because I've done a lot of things, even in the business thing. I always got to sneak this in because it's a very good part of my background that I use in business every day. Being the farm kid from Iowa and still living on. That was a real farm. I just have an expensive for the kids hobby farm now. But farming is entrepreneurship. So I grew up as my dad's right-hand man. Didn't really think of it as a business, but certainly now I can look back and see all the lessons. Then undergrad chiropractic school. And the short of my whole long chiropractic story is I was going to be totally regular, musculoskeletal, sports performance, kind of standard chiropractor. I went to Palmer. I definitely had the philosophy, understood the nervous system through Dr. Chestnut and Dr. Murphy. So I always have been subluxation based, run scans. Fletcher's one of my, idols and mentors. But branding wise, for the sake of this podcast, it was going to be super ordinary, which would have left it super difficult to grow very big, grow very fast, because I would have been right in that red ocean, which is kind of like chapter 1 to figure out if you've ever read a good marketing book. This was not the choice. It was for marketing purposes. It was how my life evolved. That 2 weeks before I opened up my shop, my wife and I did, Christine and I did, our oldest baby girl, Addison, was born. So we had a brand new baby, and that life started. We had a brand new practice, which is like 8 babies at once for all of us that have opened one. And so everything that I cared about, was passionate about, obsessed about would be my word, was pregnancy, pediatrics, and family care. So pretty much as soon as I had opened the doors on this regularly branded chiropractic, I metaphorically shut it back down and then built a new one in its place with pediatrics, prenatal, and then the perfect storm, which is our specialty with really tough, really challenged kids, really grew through that. And Oliver, my son, the miracle man himself, was the final catalyst God sent us that said, this is all you will do forever. And so we got that practice 14 years in, just cranking, 6 doctors, massive impact in our community. And then now been able to help other chiropractors in all things, from clinic to communication to marketing. And so the pediatric experience is, its membership is fast catching our weekly patient volume, now that I think about it. So I better grow both of them as we go forward.
Can you, buddy? Because I've been thinking about Oliver a lot recently with the birth of Sonny. So, Sonny at the time when we're recording this is coming on 16 weeks old. And, my third baby, and I watch him there. And as a dad, I watch him breathe and make sure he's breathing, and I worry about him and all those things there too. And I've been thinking about what it must have been like for you and Christina with Oliver. Can you share a little of that story? You can't hear it enough there too. And I want to know what that must have felt like as a dad.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a wee bit of a left turn, bro. Yes. Yes. It'll be the coolest thing, because right now, I mean, every bit of our kids' lives is amazing. His beginning in this frame definitely wasn't, though. But right now, it's extra amazing. Oliver, I'll get to where he is today, then I'll go back to those 6 weeks in the NICU and, him being the sickest baby and not supposed to make it out and all those things. But right now, he's like a 16-foot tall 12-year-old with a gigantic fro, and he's just crushing kids in basketball, which is the weirdest thing ever for his short, terribly skilled basketball father to watch. But yeah, I'm living that dream life. I got 3 daughters in addition to Oliver. So this is my first foray into sports dad life, and loving it. So he is thriving. School life, sports, healthy as can be. Like, he's that chiropractic kid, right? He's all out healthy. Like, it's like mystifyingly healthy, especially if you go back to his beginning. Ridiculously traumatic physical birth, injury to his cervical neurospinal region, his brainstem, all the things that he was born my 3rd year of practice. I had spent my first 2 years really studying this thing I now call the perfect storm, which is how birth trauma to the brainstem and the neck, from whatever kind of birth intervention, there's about 3, 4, 5 of them that all do not good things to the entire nervous system, and thus to that child's entire life. So Oliver went from an ambulance to a hospital. Then from that hospital, they were not even equipped enough to take care of how emergent he was. So he went in a freaking helicopter ride within the first hour of his birth to what they call a level 3 NICU. And what it felt like was, as you probably hear from a lot of people in these sort of scenarios, whether it's themselves or especially if it's their kid going through it, it felt very much like a Twilight Zone, like you were there, but not there. There's not a lot of sleep. There's ridiculous amounts of emotion. So this is going to sound super corny, and it's going to sound like, well, of course that'll be the end, but it was literally how God planned it for us. My sanity through the 6 weeks in the NICU, especially the first 2 weeks, getting him out of the most emergent part, when I kind of had to step back and let medicine do what they're the best in the world at, which is put fires out. Chiropractic was my saving grace, because I just busied myself with getting even better than I was blessed. My mentor, Dr. Cody, couldn't come into the hospital, but he was, basically like calling plays from the booth, with giving me tips on adjusting. I had a conversation with he connected me with Dr. Ted Carrick, who had been working on patients who were in a coma, which is effectively what Oliver was. So I could go on, but this really happened. I read Malillo's textbook. I read the pediatric chiropractic textbook cover to cover like 3 times. I just stayed busy adjusting him. I probably adjusted him, if you kind of were to say like, okay, this session's an adjustment, 3 to 5 times per day. Yeah. I mean, everything we learned from Oliver is part of our clinic today. We have kids that fly over from all over the world with TBI and that to come get our intensive programs for 2 weeks. But the feeling was terrible. And so as a dude, I think that's kind of how we're wired. Like, I didn't want to sit around and be sad as it was. I wanted the inner farmer and chiropractor in me wanted to fix it, or at least go down trying. And it worked. It worked.
When I've never shared this story on the podcast before, this last 18 months, in my meditation, and in some of my assisted psychedelic meditation, I've had these themes of death come up. Like, first time it came up to me, like I was in a really lovely state, super connected, and I said, "What is it that you want to tell me?" And fuck me if the first message that didn't come to me is death. You're going to die. I went, that's not the message I want to hear. Dude, I'm metaphorically dancing through the daisies. Like, I'm connected. I'm like, everything is feeling beautiful. I'm in a deep, deep meditation and just, tingling. And then death comes. I'm like, whoa, no. And pushed that away. Didn't want to listen to it. Let's go back to nice stuff again then too. Came up again. I went, you know what? I got to stay with this because it keeps on coming back to me. And so I stay with it and I go, okay, what is the death that is coming up here? Does it mean that I'm going to die there too? And really what came to me in the end was that there was a death that was happening, and the death was the sale of a practice. The death was moving out of Melbourne down to where we are now, and there was a death of an identity for me into who I am now. That's what really made sense for me. And when I got that message, it helped me transition out of that practice, transitioned into what I'm doing now. So now we're in a home birthing with Lauren and Sunny. Everything's going along really, really great. We've got my cousin Lynn, who is the midwife, who's just one of the best midwives in the world. Okay, she's the goat. Like, people move to this area for 6 months so they can get Lynn to come and rent houses out there too. And she's my cousin, and she's like, hey, yeah, man, we'll do it. So, and we're maybe 8 or 10 hours in, and she looks at me. She goes, "We need to go to the hospital." I'm like, "Oh, right." I'm like, "How fast do we need to go to the hospital?" She's like, no. She's okay. Pop Lauren in the car, drive to the hospital. It's okay. So I don't have to ask her any questions because I know we're on the same page and she's the expert in this situation. So we get to the hospital. Long story short, we then get into the intervention pathway, like we're epidural, we're fetal monitoring, and at that stage where you just start to lose control, like you understand these things there too. I get a bit upset thinking about it too. So fuck me if again, you know what popped back into my mind? Oh, no. Fucking death. Fuck me. I couldn't shift it. I couldn't. I'm like, who's dying here? My wife or my baby? Fuck, was terrifying beyond what I can communicate. And so if there's ever a benefit to having a mask on, it's now, because I could hide it from Lauren. I'm checking in with her, like I'm growing now. I'm checking in with her because I want to be there as this rock, but I just, I'd done a lot of thought work over my life and but I couldn't leave this. So then we go, okay, we're not going to push this baby out naturally. We need to have a Caesar. And Lynn sort of said to me, she said, look, there's two ways this is going to go. This can either be, if we pull the Caesar card now, you'll be able to be in there with Lauren and you can be a part of that, okay? She goes, they're all outside watching this monitoring and here's what they're watching to happen. And the moment that happens, she said, there will be a shitload of people come racing in here. They will grab Lauren and they'll be out. You won't be a part of it. Let's call it now. She's just the best, Lynn, So we do that. In the surgical room, the whole thing is kind of happening. They're getting Lauren already, and I'm out in the room outside there too. And dude, I'm like, someone's going to die here. I know it's way dramatic. This is looking back on it now, but the sense inside me with it too. Well, I'm trying to pull myself together, and I wanted to talk to the anesthetist. No, it was the surgeon at that stage who came into me. And I wanted to tell him that when the baby is born, as soon as the baby's out, please give the baby straight to me. If everything is okay, I want the baby straight away. I couldn't talk. The words wouldn't come out of my mouth there too. And I breathe, nothing. This poor doctor looking at me like I was just a lunatic in terms of what was going on. Now, fast forward, everything was great. Sunny is thriving. Lauren is terrific. She had a Caesar that day. We had her home the next day. She wasn't even in hospital 24 hours and home and great there too. And clearly none of them died. But I think about how I was in that state. I didn't cope well. And I think about where you were. It really, I'm like, I really admire you for it, but it just must have been terrifying. And because it's a different world. It's not.
That doesn't even do it. That terminology doesn't even do it justice. It is, we are the antithesis times 10. Like a thriving peds family chiropractic principled office is the inside of that is the true literal antithesis of inside the emergency room, and in all of its thing, down to the mother living decor, it is literally the antithesis of it. So to remain a chiropractor inside there is a hell of a journey. I honestly think because Oliver's was so emergent, I don't know that I've thought about it until this chat to this depth of it, but because it was so emergent, it almost compelled me into it. And then what I do know logically, or whatever the word, I don't know what the freaking word is, I do know after all this time, 12 years of Oliver's life and all the times that it's come out in these chiropractic circles to help other chiropractors find their certainty, is this truth is in there. I already had my certainty in chiropractic when that shitstorm brewed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So Angus, I don't think I did a lot of talking, Angus. In fact, that might be the most mystifying thing in history, is if I was actually quiet. That probably stressed Christina out more than anything. But yeah, it was just how you hear the stories of mom, the kid's a car accident and the car is trapped under the kid's leg and she lifts the car off. You just kind of have, through our bodies, we have this superhuman strength that comes with it. No one would have removed me from Oliver's Atlas. I've never fought anybody in my life. I would have gone Jedi. I'd have been freaking, Marvel comic Hulk, throwing people off of me. If they'd have tried to get me off of his parasympathetic nervous system when he was in full sympathetic on the brink, dominance. So it's so nerdy, but that was my saving grace, man, to kind of move forward each day and each step was I gotta adjust him. And so now, Jesus, I say those words and hear them myself. I don't think of anything. It's still Oliver. He just doesn't need it as emergently, obviously now. But that's my thought. Right now, in an ambulance, hell, in a helicopter, in your country and mine, and everybody who's listening, there's an Oliver on the way to the hospital. And right now, for now, we'll fix this. It's exactly the whole freaking strategy. And we're gonna add speed to it. Right now, I'm not there to adjust that Oliver. You're not there to adjust that Sunny. And then even after they get, let's say medicine doesn't, they do their best and actually save them and get them out of there, they're not going to your office next. Or Laura, Lizzie's, some will, 3%, maybe, I don't know. And so yeah, that's everything. That's the stickiness of Oliver's story. It's like, because when Christina and I always talk about this a lot, we talked about it on a walk again the other day, like we just marvel at him as he plays every game of basketball. Like we just take 0% for granted. We don't with any of our children, but it's in this way, it's actually a little bit easier with Oliver to really live in the moment. And but the moment that we think of is like that whole, like the back 4 weeks of his 6 weeks in the NICU, after he had, for the first 2 weeks, he had his own room, freaking own team. He was the sickest baby, surgeries and ECMO and all these different things. And then you move to kind of, I guess I'll just kind of call it the regular NICU. And they have these pods, they call it. And there's 8 babies in this room at the hospital that we were all in. Dude, 7 of those were continually getting shot up, just in case they wanted to get frisky with the IV drug users, I guess, in the back. They needed to be saved from that. And none of them were getting adjusted. They weren't getting good nutrition. They weren't, when we left with the Cairo kid. When 7 out of 8 left, they left with a forever entrenched, never leaving the medical system kid. We went back into that building once when he was 6 months to get like kind of a post check. And you want to talk about, we'll finish with this. I had it kind of in reverse. None of those people, the medical doctors, the neurologists, the cardiologists, I remember at that appointment now, none of them could speak to me, dude. They didn't know how to, they were like frozen and talking because they're looking at his chart and they're like X, Y, and Z happened. And then they look at the baby and his perfect EEG and his perfect MRI and his perfect EKG and all this shit that got fixed. And it was not making sense. It was not computing in their head. Then they're looking at me and they're like, what are you, some mystical creature? And I'm like, listen, I told you the whole freaking time, this is how chiropractic works. But yeah, those are some of the innards. I did not know that about Sonny. I do know this. That kind of stuff only happens to those like you and your beautiful wife, that strong to handle it and move forward through it. Even if there's a moment of frozenness, it doesn't last.
It's no, and it hasn't. And here he is, 15, 16 weeks old. And, Lauren's kind of communicating with her other mums and stuff like that too. So healthy, so thriving, so beautiful in terms of as he's moving and growing and stuff like that too. Let me transition from that into this. There'll be some of you that'll be thinking now, because this is mid-January, early January that this episode is out. Okay. And so it's a good time for thinking about putting a line in what happened last year and thinking about the new. And we think, I want to change my practice, grow my practice, evolve my practice, have it better express me. And then there's this thought about how long it's going to take. And, maybe I could have a practice like Tony in the next 5 years or over the next decade and all those kind of things there too. And we sometimes put these limitations. I mean, all healing takes time. There are limitations of matter inside of there too. But there are steps that we can do and implement that massively increase speed. That's what I want to talk about now. Floor is yours.
Okay. Yeah. I've really been on this because, we're in planning mode for next year and I want to get after some big stuff. And I just, I'm a hyperactive. This is why I excel at taking care of wound up ADHD kids because, relatability, right? I totally understand where
we serve our own.
Yeah. Where you're like, I'm like, dude, I get it, kid. You're sitting in math class. And you're like, pick it up, math teacher. I figured that one out 3 weeks ago, let's go. And so I've applied that ADHD-ness to my business, but not with like randomness and chaos and trouble and side effects. It's like, okay, how do we actually systemize speed and go fast? Because I just loathe slowness. Like I just can't handle it. And so I really think there's 3 chunks to this magic speed in business formula, or 3 elements maybe would be the mathematical equation. And the first one is putting yourself in a place to think better. Okay. This one shows up in other business and leadership books. The mastermind we're in, we've been talking a ton about it with Josh and Dave and Dan and those guys. But I spend a whole lot of time, that isn't seen on social media, that isn't seen by my patients or my team. Like, I actually, in a very good way, even the outside of work habits I have, like being on the farm and working out and doing these sort of things, and my wife included. When I'm saying I mean Christina and I are awesomely the same human in this way. I spend an inordinate amount of time thinking. And what I really mean by thinking with this first chunk, everyone, is I mean thinking and watching and learning as well. I'm not just daydreaming. Like there's a functionality to that thinking where I'm looking at whether it's the marketing of our practice, and for the 4 hours of mowing one day in that week, it's like very marketing focused, or it's another walk with Christina for 90 minutes out in nature, and we're just completely thinking and talking about the team and where it may be scuffling and who's missing and all that. So there is a lot of time spent thinking, and I go long there. Like, I look very impatient and fast moving. The reason I do move fast once doing is that thing's already whiteboarded out, man. Like, it's whether it's on my iPhone notes or it's on whiteboard or it's on a Google document or Monday.com, like that thinking doesn't just stay lofting and wafting in the air. It's extensive, and then it becomes organized into a very, very, very step-by-step plan. So that's the second step. Goals are, this again, going to sound kind of common, but like, we love project management on our team. Like, we're not afraid of it because we've really thought through it, and we're really obsessed with the outcome. Like, we can't, that impact for those kids and that growth in our practice, like, we don't want to be like, oh, hope to get there one day. Like, yesterday would be the best mother living day to get there. So tomorrow is going to have to do.
Let me go back to that first step there too, because this is one that I'm still not great at. And the irony is, because I kind of wonder if it is that idea of I think it was Teddy Roosevelt's kind of give me 3 hours to cut down a tree and I'll spend the first 2.5 sharpening the axe. I've noticed that when I park my butt on that chair just over the side there, put my coffee next to me and just sit there and think, amazing things come up that eventually allow my business to have impact.
Yes.
But some of us, and sometimes for me, I'm like, I'm too busy for that this morning. I've got stuff to do there as well. And I dare say that there are other chiros that are listening to that feel the same way, because you're super busy. What do you do to stop yourself doing that?
Right there. Stop that. You gotta excommunicate that word from your life. Cause dude, I get it. Like, you had just said it, and I get it. So glad we're here. And I hope I do a good job of explaining this. Cause I know I'm there now. I don't know that I have the best way to articulate how I got there, cause it's been this natural adaptation, evolution sort of thing. So trying to break it down, it's this. Anytime, which is pretty much every time somebody introduces me as busy, like I'm about to go do a talk or whatever, and they're like, busiest. A couple months ago, this kid's like, busiest guy in chiropractic. I'm laughing my ass off on the inside, because I'm like, not actually, like, no. Here's so that thing has to go away first. Like, this concept of I'm not important to myself, to my mission, to my business, to my team, to my family, if I'm not busy. Busy, I think, is the antithesis of productive, right? I see busy people and I don't want them on my team. I want just focused, leaned in people who have enough respect for speed to take time off to recharge and haul ass and get after it. And so I'm actually my favorite book that I think, it's not exactly this, but it's definitely within it. Willpower Doesn't Work.
Yes.
Is changed my life. Like, I'm sitting here, kind of the second other half of my home office. When we bought the farm is the reason, like, I love being on a farm, but it very much fits this. I designed, with Christina's help, we designed this little guest house. It was an in-law suite that was attached to the garage on the farmhouse we bought. It's designed for this first element. Now, I do work in here, don't get me wrong. I got the video, I've got my 2 Macs. I do action in here, but I probably spend 2 to 3 hours of a 4-hour shift. I live in shifts instead of days. And out of a 4-hour shift that I may be here in my home office, 2 to 3 hours are design thinking. Like, it's designed actually, and this is just an example, everyone, you find your place and do it that way. It's designed. The couch I'm sitting on is the most uncomfortable piece of shit couch ever. And here's why. Okay. You're like, what does this have to do with anything? I had Christina design it and buy furniture that looks like a hotel lobby. Okay.
Yes.
It's ridiculously uncomfortable to sit and be lazy in this office. I designed it for productivity because right before we bought this farm a couple of years ago, I had just kind of been coming off the road for 7-8 years with the group I worked for before, where I had to fly everywhere, do everything, and grow that business. And being away from my family, I worked intentionally like 12, 14, 16-hour days at conferences because I wanted to get as much done when I wasn't with my kids as possible. So I recreated that environment here. I can go for a walk. We got trails on the farm, and so I would say, I'll finish that long storytelling with, to give you a tangible action way for the busy chiropractor to unbusy themselves, schedule it in.
Yeah.
When I have my weekly schedule, probably on paper on my passion planner has a lot less to it than the average chiropractic bear who's busier than me, but yet, and I hate the word me, but this is just the conversation we're having today, but it ain't getting done as much as me each week.
Yeah.
And this is actually the magic formula to it. It's like adjusting a perfect storm kit. Less is more. Always less is more.
So step one, being a place to think better. So we've talked about that. And then the step two was to capture that information and then plan it. Yeah. Like get it onto something. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can do this old school meets new school. I use both. I have, the both sides of that one. I actually just ordered a new one because like those two ideas on that whiteboard and the other side, they're too damn good. I can't erase them. So, and yeah, I know you can take a picture of it and then you can print. That ain't the same as it's there. Like it can get erased when Team PwC and Team PX have accomplished that whiteboard. It can then meet its eraser. Okay.
Yeah, nice.
So I'm old school with whiteboards, and I very much have that. We're about to build a whole new office building for PX headquarters, which will have an entire, whiteboard wall. We're going to do the paint and everything. And then I also, 2022, as this comes out. So I use digital software. We have fallen in love with Monday.com. And then I'm pretty super organized within Google Drive as well. And really making, like, here's a perfect tangible example. Okay. It'll actually set up step 3 too, which is who, not how. Same author, as willpower doesn't work. But we just hired a new full-time chief marketing officer for the pediatric experience, which is our training program for other chiropractors. I'm actually 6 months overdue. I kind of didn't take my own medicine or my own adjustment. I should have done that long ago. I've never onboarded a marketer before. I have them at PwC, but they're part-time. So the way the PwC marketers are and the team members, they kind of follow my I call the place, I'm in the booth and I'm setting the strategy and doing all that. So I've moved beyond having to do it all myself, but I am still the innovator and creator of the strategy. So that makes sense there. And then next with PX though, I want to move off of every idea needing to be mine. I'm not tired of having them. I'm not going to shut them down. Step one, I'm going to have more of them than ever as I create space. But I want to take the pediatric experience to 3,000 chiropractors in 3 years. We're at just short of 800 now, just short of 700 now. And so I'm going to need John, who's coming on the team. I'm going to need him to create just as many and as good of ideas as me. So what I needed to do is figure out a really good system of onboarding John, and I've never done it before. So it took me about the last 3 weeks, many hours per week of thinking to get to what I was able to create today. I sent him a 1-page document that literally has the next 90 days synthesized, the top 5 projects with the top 3 moves. So it's like, if you can imagine, the kind of get a visual of the bullet points, right? Yeah. They're in order that matter most to the business. Each of them has 3 pieces within them that we're going to have to do in the next 30 days to get started. Now he has his play sheet for the first 100 days of work, and it's not going to be 100 days of randomness to, oh, this guy's useless. I hired him. I'm paying him. He's not doing anything. I thought it took 3 weeks of thinking to then create a plan. That piece of paper goes into monday.com. So we got a paper version. If he wants to print it out, keep it at his desk, and it gets installed by my VA. She'll put that up into an organized monday.com, which is a project management software. So now step 2 is done. We've got the plan, but that, right in the same thing, I'm kind of giving you step 3, Angus, which is who. There's a lot to do on that piece of paper. I plan on doing pretty much none of it. Yeah. That's the key. So who, not how. And I actually think if we split them apart, I wonder if chiropractors, most of them are maybe doing a good job of, like, they're going for a run or they got their commute. They're squaring out some time to learn, coach, get mentored, be thinking. Because by the way, getting mentored, being on a mastermind, listening to this podcast, you're doing this right now. You're doing step 1. You probably, create some sort of plans and systems and strategies, at least, loosely constructed. You probably get a lot better at them. But as a profession, we are the worst at step 3, which is investing in other humans and realizing that there is no way to go fast without handing off the baton after 100 meters. Because 4 people can haul ass around a track, a lot faster 100 meters at a time than 1 person at 400.
It's interesting because I think by the nature, chiropractors tend to be good hustlers. Yeah. So, and we get good at, we might have thought, look, I'm going to do this chiropractic thing because I want to help some peeps. Then you're like, oh, you got to run a business, you got to train some staff, you have to learn a few of these bits and pieces. And so therefore we get good at doing all these little bits and pieces. So therefore it would make sense that, I got to learn this marketing stuff there too. I got to learn how to build a web page. I've got to learn how to, and so that natural, what got us that first step there too can actually be a handbrake, because it gets to a stage where, like, they're too much. And then you end up kind of heading down the wrong path there too. And so it is the book by Benjamin Hardy and Dan Sullivan, not the chiropractor Dan Sullivan, the business coach, is called Who Not How. In fact, I'm reading, I just love both of their stuff there too. The Gain or the Gap, I think, is their new one, which I've just started reading also. But the title of the book says it all. So the question to ask yourself when you've put that plan out, you go, okay, this plan requires us to do, A, B, and C. And then the next question you ask yourself, who can do this for me? Finding who's that you can invest in to help along the path has been something that has helped me enormously. Why do we not? Why do we not do it? Obviously, there's other reasons I talked about as well there too. But are we telling ourselves I don't have the money for it? Is it that what is the story?
I suppose I definitely think that's probably one of the, I don't know that it's the primary subluxation. It's probably secondary or tertiary, kind of all intermingled into this. I think in this, as of recording this, there's a huge drive in the profession to just be profit obsessed, profit first. And I've read that book, Mike, and that's good too. There's so many good concepts. Really what that is a good strategy to pay your taxes on time, is really what that is. And so maybe because we're too tight with our money, and it's like, I went to school and I have all these loans and yada yada yada, and so we hang on to it. But I really think it's 2 things tied at the hip. It's misplaced, misperceived ego that you're actually any good at building a landing page or running Facebook ad. Like, you think you're great at all this stuff that you're really quite exceptionally terrible at. But you've just been doing it. You've never asked anybody else to do it and seen their products. So you think you're great because it's worked just well enough to get you where you are. And then the second thing is, I actually think it's laziness. And I know that sounds the opposite, because you're like, how are we talking about being a hustler and a lazy person at the same time? We all know that when we ask for help, meaning hire someone, or the people we've already hired, allow them to do more, the very first moments after that suck the most, because you have to slow down and show them how to do it and show them how you want it done, and actually spend time letting them fumble and bumble around. And even after that time spent, showing them how you do it, showing them your processes, letting them know these are the guidelines. This is the level of excellence we seek to reach with this article or this video or this landing page. Or when I'm training adjusters at the office, this is how we get kids out of the storm. Like, you can't use your half-ass adjusting skills here. This is how we do it. It's a very slow process in the first time or two around the track. And let me just finish painting the picture we're all aware of, so you can understand it, so you can see past it, so then you become obsessed with getting past it and willing to do it. Even after all of that, slowing down, holding their hand, showing them how to do these things, the first time or two they do it, it will not actually meet your expectations.
Yeah.
Keywords being the first time or two. If I were to go back, Angus, and look at the very first Perfect Storm PowerPoint slide deck I ever created, I probably used Comic Sans and clip art. It probably looks like a third grader vomited on my PowerPoint slide. If I had a video of doing that talk, that the Toastmasters club I was a part of in school would probably shut down, because they would feel like they were such failures that they watched this guy do a talk. Toastmasters trains you how to do public speaking. They'd be like, we've failed our mission. Those are all my first times. And it's just so rad how that takes for literally just a hot second. I could go on for another hour, like just in the last 3 weeks of like, I gave this to this person and I had to spend 20 minutes on Zoom with her to show her how to do it. Dude, she's now done 3 and she's crushing it. It's better than I was. And there's a cheat code I'll sneak in here before we get done with step number 3. Be aware of this and hire people who have situational awareness and aptitude. There's only one kind of person that gets on my team, and that is someone who is willing to work with speed and try stuff on their own. They're not going to ever be left on their own. They're always going to have resources and things they need to do the job well. But they also know that hand-holding is only allowed for a time or two, and then the life jacket comes off, and they're got to swim on their own.
So tell me what you mean by situational awareness and aptitude, and how do you assess for that? What does it look like? How do you assess for it?
Yeah, you can't always get it right. I think like Stephen Franson, maybe he calls it something different. He might have an assessment for this. He's fancier than I am, though. Remember back to the farmer things. He's from the East Coast. I think I love Stephen and his crew, and Miner. I could just picture them all in their suits right now. Just remarkable practice. They're phenomenal. Then you go to a PX event. It's like cowboy boots and t-shirts. It's how God made us all.
Absolutely.
So, situational awareness to me, if they don't have it in the little things, then they're not going to have it in the big things, which is business. So during an interview process, I will literally watch if they're kind of awkward on finding where they're supposed to sit versus not. There's just so many kind of examples of it. And I ask, if I am going to go through their resumes and whatnot too, I will ask on this. But I think situational awareness shows up just in life. You've got a red light that you're coming up to, and there's 5 cars in the left lane, and you got an open spot on the right. Are you the person that takes the right lane and then hauls ass when it turns green and beats those fools? You're on the team then. That's so I know that these are just the things my team, if they listen to this, they're gonna laugh, because I have 3 missions for my children. Be kind, so be loving and caring. Be humble, always be willing to learn, and then situational awareness. Just you just have to read the room. I think part of this is a little bit of detail, being able to, particularly when you're delegating things to people and you don't want to. So I've had multiple VAs over the years. They're 2.
And we do the similar thing when we're hiring for CAs also. So if I'm putting up a job application on onlinejobs.ph, I've got lots of Philippines. I love employing over there. But I will make sure that, for instance, on the email that they send me, I will say in the subject line, please put coffee tastes great, something that's irrelevant to what's going on there. And it is because this is also helpful because I will get hundreds of responses from this. The online kind of website there, I'm sure, just allows them to hit a button and apply for a job there too, if they haven't actually read. So immediately those that don't, follow the instructions, I don't care how amazing they are, I don't follow it through. And then I also, when we're at different times when we're running for a job for our CAs, I will say, please post your resume to this address. Now, if somebody drops it in by hand, I'm like, I didn't ask for that. And I know that you think you might be going above and beyond, but it's really important that you can follow directions. If you email it in, nope. And so again, with these little things, little tests that I will put in there, I go, if this is how in the very earliest stages of our relationship, okay, when things are at their heightened, if you can't follow directions at this stage, down the track, when you find out really what an asshole I am, you're definitely not going to be listening to me then. So I wonder if that's part of that too, but I kind of get that situational awareness and aptitude. I'm like, oh, I wonder how I can test.
And the other thing is, we all know this about interviews, like anybody can show great pretty much through the whole process. I mean, literally, I just swung and missed on one just recently too. So there's nothing about this is like batting 1,000 and has it that way. But we always deploy a 90-day onboarding process. Yes. We're super hiring people. Like, look, the first 90 days is we're dating. It's the engagement period before marriage. And really, honestly, I am not looking for them. That is a fresh time. They don't need to do everything with excellence during that time. But by the time they get to middle of that, like 30, 45, 60 days, if they still need, usually I have the way we kind of are now, like I'm not even doing most of the hands-on training. We've got our different kind of department leaders, Dr. Matt, Jackie, all these others who are probably doing this. But if they're kind of letting me know, hey, Dr. Tony, we're 60 days in with John, and let me use a different name because he's going to crush it, with Frank. And yes. Frank still needs me. I just don't want to put that in the universe. You know what I mean? with
Definitely Frank, not John.
Yeah. John, you're going to handle this all on your own. Okay. But if we're 60 days in and Dr. Matt's like, hey, Dr. Frank is still asking me to come into the room with over half of the adjustments and kind of walk him through the analysis and the communication and handhold him, like Frank ain't making it to day 90. Yeah. In those 90 days, he or she has to turn the corner and start to handle 90 to 95% of their job responsibilities without handholding. So basically that's what the 90-day period is. Mm-hmm. And I say 90, but you just heard the breakdown of it. It's really about 30 to 45 days. Yeah. We are here for you in every way to show you the job. Actually, hang with me. So this is CA. This is right to your practical brick and mortar practice, everyone. Because you're thinking like VA, what does that have to do, on that? This is on Slack from our team. We got a wins channel on here. We just hired a new back office CA because we have another CA who has just shown some amazing leadership, and we wanted to level her up to a leadership position. So we had to fill her shoes, and we hired a patient who came in, and she is on her 3rd week. So she's not even 30 days in. And our office coordinator puts this out and says, so many team wins today, but I wanted to do the very first shout out to Sarah, who earned her stripes like a freaking boss today. In the back, doing billing, up front on the phone, working flow, cleaning the toy room, slanging garbages, and closing her very first financial care plan. I mean, come on, nice work. So proud of you. If you were to follow, if you would have been inside PwC for the last month, Sarah's onboarding, someone was at her hip with each of those 5-6 things that she did, showing her how to do it. And then yesterday was jump day. Yeah. Very strategically planned that day. Like, okay, Sarah, you're on your own today.
Yeah.
Let's see how you do.
And let me clarify. In fact, let me ask a question. How much of that training have you done for Sarah?
Oh, 0%.
Yeah.
You want to take it? This is what
Yeah.
Hill gave me the other day. I am going forward with a goal this year. I am taking who, not how to the stratosphere because I know what it'll do for our impact. I am going to set a goal to leave every team meeting I'm in. And I have a couple per 2 companies and a couple of meetings per week, 1 meeting with the docs and 1 meeting with the marketing team for the practice. And then here with PX, 1 meeting with the operational team, support team, and 1 meeting with the marketing team. So 4 meetings a week. And my goal is to leave with 0 things or at most 1 thing that I am actually responsible for doing. Now, maybe this is a good finishing touch on this. Even just a year ago, my misplaced pride about how important and awesome I am at all the things, hearing someone say that, I would have kicked myself in the anterior sacrum and said, who do you think you are, Mr. Awesome? What are you gonna go? Go play golf? You're gonna go, you're gonna go do some squats? Maybe. Because you know what the team needs from me? Not to build a landing page or make every adjustment. They need, we will hit our stratospheric goals the more time I have to think. Because the bigger of shit we're going after, the bigger of ideas and visions and team members I need to come up with. So if I leave every team meeting with 5 things to do times 4 meetings, now I'm Tony the taskmaster instead of Tony the leader.
Yeah. My question I want to ask our audience to really think about with this too, because some of this might be challenging, the idea of, stepping back and more into a thought leadership type sort of role there too. The question I ask you though is, how's what you're doing working for you now? And if it is working really great, then this will be just hopefully an entertaining chat that Tony and I have had for you as well. You've got to experience me tear up a little earlier on there too. But if you're looking for something new in 2022, did you get that?
I got that.
You're a wanker, Angus. If you're looking for something new this year, then the simplicity and the power in more thought time. I'm taking this on board there too. I'm a good planner. Okay. It's not that I need to work with, but my plan does lead to me doing more of the things. I can step up my who, not how game there too. Hey, buddy, I really love you. I really do. I so appreciate everything that you do. I'm so deeply inspired by you as well, and very grateful to have you as a friend. Thanks for joining us on the show today. I'll leave the floor for you to finish things up.
Okay. All right. Well, first off, I'll put this on your to-do list, everyone. Keep listening to this amazing human who I love in return at the same level, just an impact maker. You know this, and I know you guys kind of smile and laugh when I say it. Like, I take at least 1 thing from your podcast every single episode. There's hundreds of them now, and I install it and it works. So in your thinking time, step 1 of kind of our little 3-part equation, everyone, today, definitely continue this podcast as your thing and share it with your homies who are struggling to market, lead, and grow their practice. There's kind of a 4th one I'll sneak in at the end as my parting thought. The cheat code to speed. I grew up in the age of Nintendo, and you couldn't get emails. You'd get this magazine once a month, and they would have a cheat code, how to beat my stupid brother Brett in Mario Kart, right? And the cheat code is really mentorship and training. Yeah. Somewhere where you lack, whatever it is, I literally don't care what thing or things it is in your practice. There is a course, there is a mentor, there is a coach that you could pay for that will vastly increase the speed of you getting that thing done and then getting it better and seeing the impact and the income and the return come from it. And so just like we talked about before, don't hold your dollars back in 2022 and not hire people and invest in that. And probably for most every one of you, hiring a new, better, different mentor, course, coach is maybe the pivot you need to make in 2022 to break from where you are. If it's pediatric chiropractic that is your jam, you get with us in the pediatric experience. If it's videos and social media and influencing your community and leading from the front, Angus is where you go and where you hire. So I would push you in that direction too. I always go fast still today because of the Anguses, the Joshes, the Daves, and the Dans. Like anything if I'm out lawn mowing and the plan ain't coming to me, I'm phoning a friend. And when I say friend, I mean mentor who I pay a lot of money to give me the answers, and then I do. So there's my parting thought. Don't be cheap on either end. Who you learn from and who you get help from. And if you spend a little cashola next year, you'll be a whole lot faster.
Beautiful, buddy. Look forward to seeing you again real soon.
Thank you, dude. Talk soon.
If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.